Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world characterized by profound complexity, yet simplicity often dominates our instincts. Fear, at its core, is not an arbitrary emotion. It's a response, a deeply human reaction to perceived threats, disruptions, or challenges to our comfort zones. And here you stand, a woman who embodies all that challenges the status quo. Men fear a woman like you not because of who you are in essence, but because of what you represent: strength, independence, and a defiance of traditional expectations. You are competent, assertive, and unapologetically yourself. These qualities disrupt established hierarchies, forcing those around you to confront their own inadequacies. Fear is one of the most fundamental emotions deeply embedded in human psychology. It arises as a response to threats, both real and perceived, and serves as a protective mechanism to help individuals navigate uncertainty. However, fear is not always logical or proportional to the actual danger. Instead, it often emerges in the presence of things that disrupt the status quo, challenge familiar patterns, or introduce the unknown. A woman who defies conventional expectations, embodying strength, independence, and competence, can evoke such fear not because she is inherently threatening, but because of what she represents. Fear thrives on uncertainty. Human beings are creatures of habit, drawn to the predictability of established roles and systems. These structures provide a sense of stability, grounding individuals in their understanding of themselves and the world around them. When someone steps outside of these roles, particularly in ways that subvert societal norms, it can create a sense of unease. A strong, independent woman disrupts this balance, forcing those around her to confront new paradigms. The fear she inspires is not about her actions or character, but about the potential for upheaval she symbolizes. This reaction is deeply tied to the evolutionary roots of human behavior. For centuries, societies have relied on rigid roles to maintain order. These roles provided clear expectations and minimized conflict within communities. Women were often confined to roles that emphasized nurturing, dependency, or submission, while men assumed positions of authority and control. A woman who steps beyond these confines challenges the traditional power dynamics that have shaped human interaction for generations. This disruption can be perceived as a threat, not only to individual identities, but to the societal structures that depend on such roles. Fear is heightened by the confrontation with inadequacy. A strong woman often serves as a mirror, reflecting the strengths, weaknesses, and insecurities of those around her. For some, this reflection can be deeply uncomfortable. It forces them to confront areas where they may feel lacking, whether it is ambition, emotional resilience, or self-confidence. The fear of being exposed, judged, or overshadowed can trigger defensive reactions, often masked as hostility or avoidance. These reactions are not a reflection of her worth, but of their internal struggles. The fear evoked by a woman who challenges norms is also tied to a resistance to change. Change is inherently uncomfortable, requiring individuals to question their assumptions and adapt to new realities. A powerful woman embodies change, not just in her actions, but in her very presence. She represents a break from tradition, a move toward a more egalitarian society where roles are not defined by gender, but by merit and capability. For some, this shift is exhilarating. For others, it is deeply unsettling. Fear is amplified by vulnerability. To fear something is to acknowledge its potential power over you. A woman who is strong and independent holds a certain power she cannot be easily controlled, manipulated, or dismissed. This autonomy challenges the illusion of dominance or superiority, leaving those who rely on such illusions feeling exposed. In this sense, the fear is not truly about the woman herself, but about the loss of control and predictability she represents. Strength and competence are qualities that command respect and admiration, but they can also provoke fear and discomfort, particularly when they challenge traditional expectations. These traits, especially when embodied by a woman, represent a profound disruption to societal norms that have historically sought to confine women to roles of subservience, dependency, or silence. A competent and strong woman is a force of nature, carving out her place in a world that often expects her to conform, and this very act of defiance can unsettle those who are unprepared to meet her as an equal. Competence, in its truest form, is the ability to perform with skill, knowledge, and precision. It is not reliant on gender, yet society has long perpetuated the notion that certain domains, leadership, intellect, innovation, are male territories. When a woman excels in these areas, she not only disproves this myth, but also redefines the standards of excellence. This redefinition forces others to reassess their assumptions, and that reassessment can be uncomfortable. For men who have been conditioned to see themselves as default leaders or authorities, encountering a woman whose competence rivals or surpasses their own can feel like an existential threat. Whether emotional, intellectual, or physical, is similarly disarming. A strong woman is unyielding in her values, capable of withstanding pressures that might break others. Her resilience is a testament to her character, and it often defies expectations that paint women as inherently weaker or more fragile. This strength is not about aggression or dominance, it is about the quiet, unwavering ability to endure, to rise, and to lead. Yet it is precisely this quiet power that can evoke fear. In a world where strength is often equated with control, a woman who possesses it is someone who cannot be easily dominated or dismissed. The fear surrounding a woman's competence and strength is deeply rooted in the dynamics of power. Power, in many forms, has historically been concentrated in male hands, and the emergence of women who possess and wield power effectively disrupts the traditional hierarchy. It challenges the implicit belief that authority and capability are the birthrights of men. A competent woman does not seek permission to lead or excel. She does so because she is able, and her abilities demand recognition. For some, this disrupts not just professional or social dynamics, but also their very sense of identity and self-worth. Strength and competence in a woman create a standard that demands accountability. She sets the bar high, demonstrating what is possible through hard work, intellect, and determination. For those unwilling or unable to meet this standard, her success becomes a stark reminder of their own shortcomings. This confrontation with inadequacy is a source of fear, as it compels individuals to either rise to the challenge or retreat into resentment. The presence of a strong, competent woman forces a reckoning with outdated beliefs, unearned privileges, and limited mindsets. She is not feared for who she is, but for what she represents: a shift toward equality, meritocracy, and the dismantling of barriers that once seemed insurmountable. Intellectual rigidity is a deeply ingrained resistance to new ideas, perspectives, or challenges to established beliefs. It is a tendency to cling to familiar frameworks, even in the face of compelling evidence or evolving realities. For many, this rigidity provides a sense of stability and predictability in a world that often feels chaotic. However, when confronted by a strong, independent woman who defies conventional roles and expectations, intellectual rigidity can transform into fear, resentment, or even hostility. This reaction is not about her as an individual, but about the threat she poses to a worldview that feels safe, orderly, and unchallenged. Human beings are naturally inclined toward cognitive consistency. We seek out patterns, develop mental models, and rely on these frameworks to navigate complex social and cultural landscapes. These mental models often include assumptions about gender roles, beliefs that have been shaped by centuries of societal conditioning. In many cultures, women have been historically relegated to roles of nurturers, caregivers, or supporters, while men have been positioned as leaders, protectors, and providers. These roles were not just social constructs, they became deeply embedded narratives that shaped how individuals perceived themselves and others. When a woman steps outside these traditional boundaries, she challenges the validity of these mental models. A woman who is assertive, competent, and self-reliant does not fit neatly into the categories that intellectual rigidity has created. Her presence forces others to confront the possibility that these long-held assumptions about gender may be flawed or incomplete. For someone deeply invested in these frameworks, this confrontation can feel destabilizing. It is not simply a matter of disagreeing with her actions or choices, it is a deeper discomfort with the implication that the world is more complex and nuanced than they had believed. This discomfort is further magnified by the implications of change. To accept that women can be equally competent leaders, innovators, or decision-makers requires a willingness to let go of old paradigms. It demands an openness to reevaluating power structures, societal roles, and personal biases. For those who find security in the familiar, this process can feel threatening. Change is inherently unsettling because it requires effort, adaptation, and often a reckoning with past errors. Intellectual rigidity resists this process, clinging instead to the safety of what has always been known. The fear evoked by an independent woman also stems from the way she embodies complexity. She cannot be easily categorized or dismissed, and her success defies simplistic narratives. This complexity is a direct challenge to intellectual rigidity, which thrives on binary thinking and clear hierarchies. The refusal to adapt to her presence is not just a fear of her competence. It is a fear of her competence. It is a fear of the intellectual labor required to integrate her into a new understanding of the world. Intellectual rigidity, then, is not merely a personal failing, but a symptom of a broader cultural resistance to change. The fear of a woman who challenges traditional roles is rooted in an unwillingness to confront the uncertainties of a more inclusive, dynamic society. It is a fear of the unknown and the effort required to engage with it meaningfully. Comfort is a powerful force in human psychology. It represents a state of ease, stability, and predictability, shielding individuals from the uncertainties and complexities of life. Most people are drawn to comfort because it provides a sense of security and familiarity. However, this attachment to comfort can become a significant barrier to growth, understanding, and change. When a woman defies societal norms, asserts her independence, or challenges traditional roles, she threatens the comfort of those around her, not through hostility, but through her mere existence. This disruption can evoke fear, resistance, and defensiveness as it compels others to confront realities they would rather ignore. Human beings are creatures of habit, and comfort is often intertwined with routine and tradition. Traditional gender roles have long provided a framework that many find reassuring. These roles, though limiting, create clear expectations for behavior, responsibilities, and relationships. For generations, women were expected to embody qualities such as nurturing, passivity, and dependence, while men assumed the roles of providers and protectors. This division of roles offered a sense of order, even if it constrained individuality and potential. When a woman rejects these predefined roles, choosing instead to lead, innovate, and assert her autonomy, she disrupts this comforting narrative. Her independence is a reminder that the traditional framework is not absolute or universal. It is merely a construct that can be reshaped or abandoned. For those deeply invested in these roles, this realization can feel like an attack on their identity and worldview. The disruption is not necessarily malicious or intentional, but it is unavoidable. A strong, independent woman's existence challenges the notion that comfort lies in maintaining the status quo. This threat to comfort is particularly potent because it forces introspection. A woman who refuses to conform highlights the limitations of conformity itself. Her courage to pursue her ambitions or live on her terms becomes a mirror, reflecting the compromises, fears, or complacency of those around her. For some, this reflection is inspiring. For others, it is deeply unsettling. It requires them to question whether their adherence to traditional roles is born out of genuine choice or merely an avoidance of discomfort. The answers to such questions are often uncomfortable, and the fear of confronting them can lead to resentment toward the woman who provoked them. Comfort often thrives on predictability. In traditional frameworks, everyone knows their place and expectations remain consistent. A strong, independent woman introduces unpredictability. She cannot be easily controlled, categorized, or dismissed, and this unpredictability can feel threatening to those who equate stability with control. Her refusal to play by established rules forces others to adapt, rethink, and evolve processes that can be inherently uncomfortable. The threat to comfort is not about the woman herself, but about what she represents: change, complexity, and the dismantling of long-standing norms. Comfort is not inherently negative, but when it becomes a barrier to growth, it hinders progress and perpetuates outdated systems. A strong woman's presence disrupts this stagnation, pushing individuals and society to confront their discomfort and embrace the transformative power of change. The mirror effect is a powerful psychological dynamic that occurs when someone's presence reflects back the strengths, weaknesses, and unresolved issues of those around them. It is not about the person intentionally causing discomfort or reflection, rather, it's about the subconscious way in which their qualities, actions, and successes shine a light on the areas where others may feel inadequate or unfulfilled. When a woman embodies strength, confidence, competence, or independence, she inadvertently becomes a mirror for those who find themselves in conflict with these qualities within themselves. This reflection can provoke fear, insecurity, and defensiveness, as it forces individuals to confront aspects of their own character they would rather ignore or avoid. At a fundamental level, people tend to judge others based on their own experiences, biases, and self-perceptions. When someone displays characteristics that challenge these internal frameworks, it can create a sense of unease. A strong, independent woman, for example, often represents a level of confidence and autonomy that others may struggle to attain. Her ability to excel and assert herself may be a direct contrast to someone who feels stuck in self-doubt or lacks the courage to pursue their own ambitions. In this way, she becomes a mirror that forces others to reflect on their own sense of self-worth, capabilities, and desires. This mirroring effect is particularly potent because it is often subconscious. People don't necessarily recognize that their discomfort with a woman's strength or independence is tied to their own insecurities. They may simply react defensively or dismissively. They might perceive her as threatening or intimidating, not because she has done anything to harm them, but because her presence forces them to confront their own feelings of inadequacy. For example, a woman who excels in her career may make someone who feels stagnant in their own job question their own choices and motivations. Similarly, a woman who openly pursues her passions and challenges the status quo may make someone who has conformed to societal expectations feel guilty for not doing the same. The mirror effect also operates on a deeper emotional level. It's not just about surface-level accomplishments or traits. It's about how a person's presence reveals inner conflicts that are often buried beneath the surface. A woman who exudes emotional resilience, for instance, may unconsciously highlight someone else's emotional fragility. She may embody the strength that others feel they lack, and this can create a profound discomfort. For some, it's easier to dismiss or criticize her rather than face the discomfort of their own vulnerability. The mirror effect can lead to a range of defensive reactions. Rather than acknowledging the reflection and using it as a catalyst for growth, some may react with hostility, envy, or resentment. They may try to diminish her achievements or undermine her worth because accepting her strength would require confronting their own failures, regrets, or limitations. This is particularly true when the mirror reflects a direct challenge to deeply ingrained beliefs about gender roles, power, or expectations. A woman who does not conform to traditional roles is not just challenging the status quo, she is forcing others to reckon with their own complicity in maintaining it. The mirror effect is not merely about a clash of personalities, it is a confrontation with the self. A woman's strength, independence, or success may serve as a catalyst for reflection that reveals unacknowledged fears, desires, and personal shortcomings in those around her. It is a complex psychological dynamic that often leads to both growth and resistance, depending on how individuals choose to engage with the reflection they see. The mirror, while offering an opportunity for self-awareness, is not always welcomed, especially when it forces an uncomfortable confrontation with the self. The potential for rejection is a powerful and deeply ingrained fear rooted in the human desire for acceptance, validation, and connection. Rejection strikes at the core of self-worth and can trigger feelings of inadequacy, unworthiness, and vulnerability. When this fear is applied to interactions with a strong, independent woman, it takes on a particularly acute form. Her self-assuredness, discernment, and unwillingness to settle can amplify the fear of being deemed unworthy or irrelevant in her eyes. This fear is not merely about romantic rejection, but extends to social, professional, and interpersonal dynamics, reflecting broader insecurities. Rejection is tied to the human need for belonging. From an evolutionary perspective, being accepted within a group was essential for survival, and rejection often meant isolation and danger. While modern society no longer ties survival to group acceptance, the emotional impact of rejection remains profound. A strong, independent woman who exudes confidence and commands respect may seem unattainable to those who doubt their own value. Her high standards, whether perceived or real, can feel like a challenge to meet, leading some to preemptively fear rejection rather than risk the vulnerability of genuine connection. This dynamic is further complicated by societal norms and expectations. Traditional gender roles often position men as pursuers, providers, or protectors, with their sense of worth tied to fulfilling these roles. When faced with a woman who does not need financial support, protection, or validation, some men may feel their traditional role is irrelevant. Her independence and self-reliance challenge the belief that a man's value is defined by what he can offer. This perceived irrelevance can evoke a fear of rejection that stems not from her actions but from his own insecurities about what he brings to the table. A strong woman's discernment can be intimidating. She is likely to have a clear sense of what she wants and needs, both in relationships and in life. Her refusal to settle for less than what aligns with her values and aspirations can be misinterpreted as a harsh or unattainable standard. For someone already grappling with self-doubt, the idea that they might not measure up to her expectations can be paralyzing. This fear often leads to avoidance, defensive behaviors, or even hostility, as it feels safer to reject her preemptively than to face the possibility of being rejected. The potential for rejection also taps into deeper fears of inadequacy and failure. A strong, independent woman's success and confidence can highlight areas where others feel they fall short. This comparison is not always intentional on her part. It is a projection of the insecurities of those around her. The fear of being deemed insufficient in the eyes of someone so accomplished or self-assured becomes a reflection of their own perceived flaws. Rather than viewing her strength as an opportunity for growth or inspiration, they may see it as a threat to their fragile sense of self-worth. This fear is ultimately not about the woman herself, but about what she represents: a challenge to step up, to confront insecurities, and to redefine self-worth in ways that are not dependent on traditional roles or external validation.